Haley. I recently graduated from Grand Valley State, so this is actually my first year teaching. As you can probably guess, it's a wild year, but super happy to be here. I have a little bit of background in curriculum and instruction as well. So yeah, super happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
I need to switch the slides, so here we go.
Awesome. Okay, so one of the things that Kim and I just wanted to go over was creating a learning space at home. So this is one of the things that we talk to our families quite often about is where is your kid actually learning? So obviously when they're coming to school, teachers are very I guess they think a lot about what they put into their classroom, what they hang up, whether it be sports teams or student work or inspirational quotes. That would be your learning space traditionally was in a classroom. Now, obviously that doesn't look the same when you're at home. So I have a few examples to the right here and some goals on the left that I'm going to go through. So for number one, when you figure out a space, where is my student going to work? You want to be able to limit the distractions. So I talked to a family a couple weeks ago at parent-teacher conferences, and they were saying how their student gets very distracted easily. They can't seem to get much done. And we finally got down to the final decision here that it's probably not the best for them to be working in the living room where their grandparents are watching TV all the time. So limit distractions if you can. Some students would say they work best with music on. Again, that's totally up to your student, but I would say for sure they should not be in front of a couple monitors, so including a TV is probably not the best idea. Another great thing for a learning space is good lighting. So this is going to help your student not get as fatigued staring at a screen. So obviously, as we all know, that sitting in a dark room and looking at a screen is not good for your eyes. And it's really hard, cognitively speaking, for you to learn while your eyes are so focused and they're like struggling to see things. So good lighting. If you can see on the left here, there's some natural lighting with a window, obviously. But if you don't have access to that, just some good lighting, a couple lamps maybe, or an overhead light would be just fine as well. So obviously you want a learning space to be somewhere where they're going to get strong Wi-Fi. So this seems to be a very obvious thing. But again, the further you are away from your Wi-Fi router, generally your Wi-Fi gets weaker and weaker as you go. So a good place to have your student parked to do some learning would be somewhere that is close enough to the Wi-Fi router where they're going to get some good internet connection. And there's none of that distractions of, oh my gosh, I'm losing internet connection, or something won't load, or whatever it may be. So obviously strong Wi-Fi is a necessity. Next one is, we kind of talked about it, limiting background noise. So no TV going. Probably shouldn't have their siblings in the same room playing Xbox or whatever. So we're limiting those distractions that could just simply turn a student and say, oh, I'm going to watch my brother play video games instead of doing their work. So obvious, but worth saying. We want the learning space to be cleanly. So obviously you and I can all agree that when your house or your space is cluttered, you kind of have this like, feeling of uneasy, and your student's going to face that as well. So if we can keep the learning space clean, doesn't need to be like OCD, everything straight, nothing like that, nothing crazy, but just decluttered so that the student doesn't feel like they have to trip over someone's shoes or clothes when they're trying to do their work. I put in here positive vibes. So again, cognitively speaking, you really would like a neutral color on your wall. Now, I'm not going to ask you to renovate your house. That's totally unrealistic. But a place that has neutral colors, maybe some art or some decorations, some family photos, things like that. And the next point here is to personalize it. So that's something that we try and do when the students are in person, is to kind of make the classroom feel like they're part of it, it's there. So usually we put up student work, or if we have students who are big Lions fans or whatever it may be, we try to kind of incorporate that so they feel like their space is there. So again, on these photos that I have examples of, you can see that on the left one it says Wright. I don't know if this person likes to write, maybe their last name is Wright. On the right side we have a picture, I believe that's a basketball court. So if this student likes basketball, you can also see the rug is baseball, so this person's probably very into sports. And as you you can see, that kind of makes them excited to go to their space, their learning space. So a little bit of personalization is great. A comfortable temperature, again, we're getting pretty specific, but we don't want the kids to be too comfy. We all know what happens when we're wrapped up in a blanket and we're warm, we cash out and go to sleep. So 70, 71 degrees, we don't want it to be too chilly for them, but a comfortable temp that's not going to put them to sleep is great. And then the last point here that I want to point out is used for learning only. So this can get kind of fuzzy sometimes. I actually had a Google Meet the other day, and a student had their camera on, and it was very evident that they were laying in bed. So I guess when I'm saying used for learning only, I just want to make it very clear that it's not a good idea to have your student working from their bed. I would actually even go further and say probably not their bedroom. But obviously, I'm not asking you to build an extra room for your child, but make it so that the learning space is somewhere they can go and they know they need to sit down and focus and learn. Does that make sense? And then, so you can see on the right-hand side, I have some things pointed out. It's very organized. There's good lighting. There's lamps. It's personalized. Both of these are kind of Pinterest pictures, which, again, we don't expect, but a little bit of something, something just to make the student feel like they are in this space to learn and to grow and to do some work is great. I am pretty sure we're going to have this presentation shared with everyone, but I have a really cool link down there. It kind of just walks you through basically what I just said. It's got some good research behind it. Yeah, thanks, Kim. Okay, so the second thing we want to talk to you about is schedule. So I am at the middle school, TK Middle School, and this is kind of how we're breaking down the days. So we found out when we just told the students, you know, oh, work 4 to 5 hours a day, you know, that should get you on pace. A lot of parents and a lot of students were saying, we need structure. We need more help to say this student needs to be working from 8:30 to 9:30. So what we did is we came up with a suggested schedule. So this is totally recommended. But as you can see, I've kind of broken it down by hour, and then also what we've done is we put in some brain breaks. So I'll get to that in a second, but you'll see that a good nice thing about virtual learning is you can sleep in a little bit more. So TK starts at 7:35. I was generous in making this schedule that I told them about 8 o'clock, 8:30 to get up and start getting around. So then they really hit the ground running at 8:30. So again, 8:30 to 9:30 on Mondays would be ELA. And then another thing that you'll notice here, which is the top bullet point, 2 subjects per day. So what we're finding out with students too is it's very helpful for them to continue on in their work for one subject. If they're only focusing on 2 subjects. So they're getting more done because they're eliminating that, okay, we work on ELA for an hour, we work on math for an hour, then we work on science for an hour, then we work for social studies an hour. So there's a lot of transition, and sometimes it's easy for students to get kind of lost or distracted in those transitions. So if it's going to work for your student, I would recommend trying the 2 subjects a day. So that makes them, it also eliminates the come Tuesday, you're like, oh, okay, what was I learning in math yesterday? So obviously when you're in the classroom, it's kind of a teacher's job to say, all right, folks, like, let's get in the mindset. What did we work on yesterday? But when they're at home, they don't necessarily have that. So we're finding that it's easier for students to just work through all of their ELA for maybe 2 or 3 hours. And they're getting more done because it's just consistent straight through. Another big thing that we schedule.
Holly, could I ask you, please, for our recording, if you would explain what ELA stands for?
Sure, English Language Arts. So LA Language Arts, English Language Arts. That's both. Thank you for clarifying that. Yeah. So another thing that we have into this schedule is brain breaks, which we are also stressing heavily to our students. So I have some ideas at the bottom. The picture's a little bit blurry. Sorry about that, guys. But a brain break idea would be to get away from your screen. Maybe walk your dog, do some stretching, eat a snack, clean your room. That's a little bit maybe asking a lot, but I threw it in there. Take a shower, listen to music, maybe draw and color, exercise. And the big thing here is getting the kids away from the screen. So we're seeing a lot of fatigue and a lot of complaining that my kid's watching TV, staring at a screen for 5 hours a day. That's a lot. And that is a lot. So we're really encouraging brain breaks to be away from the screen. No Minecraft, no Call of Duty. They're getting away from the screen so that when they come back, their eyes are more focused. Cognitively speaking, they're able to actually retain more information because they have that break away from the screen. Again, 5 to 6 hours per day is what we're asking. If they were in school, they'd be doing around that. So really, to keep up the pace, they need to be putting in 5 to 6 hours a day. Thank you, thank you. Now, elementary schedule, obviously, like I said, I'm a secondary teacher, but from what I've gathered, it's the same type of thing. So at our elementary schools, K through 5, they are doing their core subjects daily, and it's a little bit more structured so that they meet their teachers and go through those core subjects together. They still are really stressing brain breaks. Again, they're working 5 to 6 hours. I'm trying to read here. So a big thing that they put on their slide, which I totally agree with, is the nice thing about online schooling or virtual learning is that you can kind of cater your schedule with what works best for you and your child, which is huge. So if you're not home, maybe you work second shift or whatever it may be, you're not home with your kid in the evening, so they need to start right away in the morning, or vice versa, you definitely can do that. So take that liberty and do that so that you are actually maximizing your help that you can give to your child. Kim, you're muted. Aha.
Thank you. All right, I said thank you, Holly. One thing I've learned from talking to learning coaches, which are the parents or the guardian or the grandma or the grandpa, whoever's helping the students across the grade levels, is exactly what Holly ended with on the slides of the learning environments, is make it work for your family. So we had it 8 to 3 trying to show a chunk of school time, but we have some families that the students are doing 2 or 3 hours with dad before he goes to work. Mom's gone, then when mom gets home after dinner, they finish. And we've worked to be creative with that and really help scaffold that, and are encouraging our families to reach out to us so that we can work with them to help. The one thing I'm also working with is my teachers too, because teachers also have to be able to breathe and sleep. So for families, just to recognize the virtual world, your teacher is a human as well, and they do need self-care. So the teachers are at school during school hours, and I've asked them to try to set a window of time. At the beginning of school, we were working 15 hours a day, but now try to set a window of time where they do check their emails and get back, but that it won't be instantaneous in an evening time to get feedback. We're trying hard we said 24-hour rule, now we're trying to make it, a 2 or 3 hour rule, but just to respect that from the school end. We want to help you and support you, but these teachers are working hard too, as well as the families. The learning coach role in virtual learning is a critical piece. It varies by the grade level of the student. The elementary children, especially K2, absolutely have to have someone with them. And it really is almost that whole 6 hours of time because someone needs to direct that student to their learning space where it is undistracted. They need to help that student make sure they're logging into the appropriate assignments and monitor, oftentimes do some review and reteaching. And I think that has been one challenging piece for families. And it is, I've heard it in a couple of ways. One is, I thought I could just go over things for 15 minutes and they could go to their room and work for the rest of the day. Or I didn't go to school to be a teacher, now I have to be a teacher. And we don't want our families to feel stressed out. We want to be able to support them, but virtual learning is that partnership. It is, we have a program and a platform. Both Hastings and Thornapple Kellogg are using the same platform through Edgenuity. And we have educators to help support, but it's not the same as being in a classroom with a teacher that can constantly monitor and support the child. So the learning space is critical, being supportive and positive. When the learning coach is struggling, whether it be at the middle school or at the high school, and asking questions, maybe not getting answers from their child, or seeing their child stressed and not knowing what to do, always reach out to school and say, what can we do? What can school do to help? My child is struggling with this. I'm concerned, and let us problem solve together. One other thing just to remind learning coaches is that the school supports are there. So we've had some students that, hadn't been connected with a counselor before, and we're offering that because it's hard. Some of these kids really are enjoying being home, and others would rather be at school with their friends, and they need to have those connects. That weekly schedule for you and your student. In there, we're providing Google Meets and meetings to meet with your class and go over work and reteach, etc. If your child needs that academically and or socially, work to make sure that's on their schedule so they can join those experiences. Talk to your child about their learning. The beginning of school, I think we were all talking about, this is new. At Thornapple College, we had 655 students over the course of, 8 weeks, 6 weeks register from August to coming in and out, and we hadn't run a virtual school this way. So it was new for us and new for families. And what we were talking about more was the platform and the stress, and we wanted to get to where we're at a better place now, but we want to talk about your child's learning and their education, and we want to be able to help the learning coach feel supported and know we care and we want to help. School has to document virtual children's attendance through two-way communications at a minimum a week. And so we need our learning coaches and our students to be partners in that and answer when we send out a Google survey or a form, when we make a phone call, reach out to us and ask for help so we can support, because that is the piece we have to continue to communicate so that we care and we know you care, and that we're really working for your students' academic best interests. Just to reiterate, please ask for help and support with academics. Virtual learning takes time though, and the learning coach has to help support to facilitate. If it's a kitchen table, it works great. You just have to have that space, and it has to be school. Remote learning last spring was different than what school is this year. We all did our very best to push out work, and most parents, like from surveys and things, students were working maybe 1 or 2 hours a day as a most. Virtual learning is school hours and days depending on your classes. If you're a high schooler and have some AP classes, etc., and then you have to figure if they're studying and homework outside of school too. It just happens to be that it's through a computer screen so often, so sometimes that fatigue sets in, but to try to find ways to do it. But learning coaches need to take care of themselves too. They need maybe another friend, the teacher, etc., to communicate with and try to lift each other up and tell yourselves you are a mom, or you are a dad, or you are a grandma, but in your learning coach role, you need to be that, and you need to motivate and support your learner. And I've counseled a lot of moms, and I feel for their moms' hearts, because they're like, I can't get the dishes done, and I'm not able to be there for my child as a mom because I'm doing this. And I said, that's where you have to find, I'm sorry about that, but find that time to be able to do both. And it's not easy, I will say that, and we want to be able to help you. Things to remember. This is new, and I think I've already said that it's new. Most of our students haven't learned this way. Most of our parents didn't go to school to be virtual learning coaches, and we're learning too. Ultimately, though, our goal is to help all students learn and to be comfortable and safe in the environment they need to be during COVID right now. We are there. We do want to help. At Thornapple Kellogg Schools, we have a lot of very qualified teachers to work and support our students, as well as all the other resources. You're important. Reminders, take those brain breaks. Find some different things to do as a family so that you can embrace that. Make lunch, cook, play a game here or there, hop, skip, and jump, sing music at the top of your lungs. Schoolwork is very, very important, but you need to be able to separate school and have some family time too. We want you all to stay well and healthy.
All right, I think I'm taking over this one from Kim. Thanks, Kim. So I'm not going to go too in depth with this because Lauren from Hastings, we're doing the same program, so she may have some more to say about it. But at TK, we are using Edgenuity. So we have a K through 12 option, virtual school option. K through 5 is using Edgenuity Accelerate. It's a little bit different. But in general, it's the same program. They're getting a little bit more support one-on-one, not necessarily one-on-one, but as a class with their teachers. So like Kim was saying, a little bit more support is obviously needed in the younger grades. 6th through 12th grade is strictly Edgenuity. So a great thing that I'm super, super proud to say is that TK has 12 certified education teachers that are running the program. So I can't speak for other districts. I have heard that some cannot say that, but I really think TK has done a great job with, like Kim was saying, provide that support, and we are qualified support for your students. So do reach out to us. We are there to help you and to educate, and we are in this together. Additionally, we have 4 special education teachers that are virtual as well. This is huge. So even our special ed students who are choosing to be virtual because that's what's best for their family, they are still receiving IEP support, 504 support from our special education teachers, which again, I can't say enough, is awesome. It's great to be supported, have these kids supported. We do Google Meeting opportunities. I know that the elementary does them daily. Us at the middle school, we have 3 teachers, so we each have a different day throughout the week to focus on the content. This is a good time, like Kim was saying, for the students to feel like a student, to see their friends, talk about good news, talk about what's going on in their lives, and then also to see their teacher and have that relationship kind of build virtually, but that relationship is still there. Oh my gosh, my dog is scratching at my door. Did you hear that? Oh my goodness, sorry. Okay, so Google Classroom is another platform that we use. This is almost like, I call it like our Facebook page. So I post like daily updates, like extra resources for the students to use, or like, hey, check out this video. It's super awesome. I think it could help you. So daily and weekly updates are on our Google Classroom, which is awesome. At the elementary, we have the B-Bus, which is awesome. It's like basically a mobile library for our kids. So obviously, K through 5, K through 4 specifically is heavy on learning how to read. So for us to have the opportunity to have a traveling library is super cool for our students, very exciting. And then last but not least, again, to make students kind of feel like they're still a part of TK, they're still involved with Spirit Week. We're doing a meme challenge where they're recreating memes about what virtual learning is. They're super funny. We're doing PBS rewards, so we're giving students rewards for filling out communications, things like that, walkathon, and then we also have virtual t-shirts that we're doing. So good stuff, good stuff.
And with that, we thank you for the opportunity to help you work on the education of your children, whether you allow them to come to our school in person or whether they're home. We appreciate your patience and the fact that this is learning and new for all of us, but we ultimately want to provide an educational opportunity for your children and support you. We'd like to, at this time, if there are any questions, answer those before Lauren can share some different things related to virtual learning.
Okay, one question is, what does the school offer as far as physical assistance, as far as technology? Do you provide some type of like Chromebook or computer assistance with internet connection, all these things that have not traditionally maybe been in a family's budget? Is the school helping with that?
That was a very good question, and I'm surprised we missed that in our thinking ahead. We actually did a Chromebook distribution. I think we passed out, 550 in one day. We provided a Chromebook and a cord for all of our families and students that wanted that. We did have some families that had iPads and other resources. So every one of our students has the ability to do that. We have a website for our virtual school, and on there we have handy handouts for technology support, and our tech department has also been very supportive. We've learned a lot ourselves, so they're calling us, helping troubleshoot and problem solve through, but we have the Chromebook set up where it takes the child right to their start page now for their grade level, and right on that is Edgenuity and the other software that's available to them to utilize. We have an issue in Berry County with internet, and that was a huge struggle and stressor for many families. We have worked in partnership. We have 7 hotspots distributed across our, we've expanded like the service, Township Hall. There's so many different places. I can't name them all, but we have 7. We did one at Camp Manitoulin. So we have them Gun Lake Community Church. Like, we have them around the district so that people can go. Our families have been very creative as well. Like, they partnered up with another family that might have better internet, and then the students are working together. We also have partnered with Camp Manitoulin, and we're paying them a cleaning fee. We use the Williams Discovery Center, and we have that set up and spaced, and parents are able to go there, and the directions are all set up, and it's warm, and there's a restroom, and it's available to TK families to be able to go, so that they would have a space that would be warm and comfortable. So yeah, so we're pleased with that. We wish we could make sure everybody had, I know we have some families that have extended like their cell phone data coverage, etc. But so far we've been able to work it out with most of our families that way. Other questions? All right, sounds like it's Lauren.
All right. So, all right. Now I got to figure out how to share.
Down at the bottom, there should be a green button.
Yeah. Yep. I'm just trying to get it so I can still see what I'm doing. Sort of. All right. And there we go. Can you guys see it?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So a lot of my information is going to be the same. So where there's redundancy, I'll kind of brush through it, but stop me if I go too fast. But this is a quote that I kind of live by as a classroom teacher. So let me take a step back. My name is Lauren Battenberg, and this is my 11th year teaching. For the past 10 years, I've been a middle school math teacher. But with COVID and all of that stuff, I applied for a virtual job this year and got it. And hopefully things, go back to normal, and we can kind of all settle into some more traditional roles again in the future. Not to say that virtual learning is ever going to go away, but who knows? This year I'm a virtual teacher. I'm not sure where I'll be next year, but hopefully at Hastings. So anyway, that was a quote I like. I think it applies to both teachers and parents. It's not our job to kind of dump all of that content knowledge into kids. I've heard the same thing from parents. I don't know all this stuff. It's been so long. I can't help my student. But I don't think it's as much about helping them with the specific content, but helping them kind of structure their day and helping them know where to look and where to find information, as opposed to giving that information to them. So I'll start there. So I'm going to also start by talking about the learning space. So just like Holly had mentioned, quiet. We don't want them in front of a TV or their other kids playing Xbox or whatever. One thing that's really important is that the space or the technology needs to be able to be monitored. So whether you're there physically to be able to see what they're doing, or you have the ability to get on and see what they've been doing while you're gone, if you have a secondary student who is doing some of their learning while you're at work, that is incredibly important, just that monitoring piece. Holly had also mentioned motivational, so whether it's bright colors or things that they like, just kind of promoting what helps the student kind of get their head in the right spot to learn. We talk a lot about setting up a specific space, and that is absolutely crucial. But giving them a little bit of movement. So if a kid's doing a reading assignment, they maybe don't have to sit, at a table in a chair, and allowing them a little bit of flexibility just to switch it up. I had said that I taught math, and one thing that I would allow kids to do if they were working on, a set of problems, allowing them to get out of their chair and maybe sit on the floor. So giving them some freedom of movement when it makes sense. Now, if they're doing a science project, that doesn't make sense to have them spread out, you know, maybe all over your living room. So maybe containing it to a specific space. When they're taking their tests and quizzes, which they do almost daily through Edgenuity, making sure that they have that designated space to come back to, but giving them a little bit of flexibility just because that's part of virtual school. So we also talk a lot about virtual schedules. I spend probably most of my time right now talking to kids and parents about schedules. So I've posted 2. They're both intended for kids who at this point are behind, because those are the kids that I tend to be kind of helping with schedules. The one on the left has them just doing 1 class per day for their core subjects. And then we've pared down the electives slightly. So we're finding it feasible for most students in most electives to do a little bit less work with the electives compared to their other classes. So that's why you'll see the electives both kind of squeezed in on Fridays. But again, that's flexible. Just like Holly, I set it to start at 8 and end at 3, like a traditional school day. But I've worked with a lot of families recently. The kids are like, well, you know, we kind of get up and we get moving and we really start our school day at 10. So pushing everything back is totally fine. I'm just making sure that the kid understands if you want to start at 10, that's cool, but you won't get done till 5. So, you know, the flexibility is there, but it goes in kind of both directions. The second schedule is one where the kids work through every single class every day. I've had a lot of kids who need some help focusing, and that 1 or 2 subjects a day tends to work better for those kids. I've got some of my other kids who in Edgenuity, the due dates are all listed daily. So they start to freak out if they're behind. So if you're not working on every class every day, it sometimes will look like you're behind. So I have some students who prefer to work every day, every subject. That's fine. Flexibility is key, and that's something that they're allowed to do in virtual school. So why not, right? But just making sure that you're talking to your student and your student's teacher about what works best for them, and then just whatever you pick, really sticking to it. That's one of the things that I've struggled with. As a kid, we'll sit down and we'll come up with a schedule, and they'll start doing it for a day or 2, and it works really, really well. And then they kind of go back to, I'm going to work on math right now, and then 15 minutes later, now I'm going to go to science, and then I'm going to do this reading for ELA. And what happens is then they don't tend to get much done. So just picking a schedule and then sticking to it with some consistency is something that we found to be really important. So I'm going to also kind of go through some of the responsibilities of each member of this virtual learning environment. So my role as their teacher or their mentor, obviously I'm monitoring the students' progress and grades. So keeping up on if they're behind or if they're doing great, and then communicating that with students and parents. So making sure that I'm reaching out and asking if there's, you know, something I can do to help them if I notice that they're behind, or sending a pat on the back email if they're doing really, really well. Because I think that constant feedback is something a lot of kids are missing, that they have in the in-person learning environment that they don't necessarily have right now. I do provide a lot of content-specific support for students. So that kind of goes back to parents don't have to know everything about everything their kid's learning. That's kind of where your child's virtual teachers and mentors come in. You know, if your student's struggling with dividing decimals, I just did a Google Meet with a kid about that today, where we just spent 20 minutes doing some practice problems together. I've done some Google Meets about ELA. We've talked about kind of finding the main topic and supporting details and different pieces of writing. But that's kind of part of my role. Obviously answering any questions and concerns that parents have. And I have, like Holly and Kim mentioned, I've learned a lot about technology and a lot about the technology side of Edgenuity and Chromebooks. So providing some basic tech support, but then also being that go-between when I can't help. So kind of giving parents and students the route to getting whatever their problem is fixed. So a lot of this information is going to be the same. So the learning coach or the parent or whoever is helping the student with their schoolwork daily. So making sure that, oh, excuse me, this is the child's role. Got ahead of myself. So Kim, I think, had talked about that two-way communication piece, and that's super important. that's kind of high in the priority list for kids every day. They're logging in and they're checking their Gmail, or if you're using the email through Edgenuity, whatever that mode of communication is that the teacher has kind of established as an expectation at the beginning of the year, that the student is checking that and then responding when a teacher or another staff member reaches out to them. One of the things that I'm finding is hardest for a lot of students right now is communicating when they're struggling. So I mentioned earlier that I'm definitely checking in on kids' progress. I'm checking their grades. I'm checking to see how much they're doing. When they're struggling, I'm reaching out, but that turnaround time is not nearly as quick as it is in the classroom. When a kid's in my classroom, I'm looking at their facial expressions. I can see when they're frustrated, and I can intervene immediately. That's not the case when your kid's at home learning. And so if they're stuck on something, I've got to know. And it might be days before I figure that out because, well, I've got a lot of kids and they're all doing different things. So for me to check on every class for every kid kind of takes a few days to get through. So if your kid's struggling, they need to kind of work on getting better at asking for help or reaching out. And that's something that's going to come, and that's going to be difficult and awkward to begin with, but I'm noticing a lot of kids are getting better with that. Following whatever schedule the student picked and deadlines the best that they can. I've been providing a lot of support on note-taking and kind of how to get the best or the most out of those lessons. And so working with the teacher on that and participating in those Google Meets about note-taking, or when the teacher offers help on something, hey, let's do a Google Meet about your science project, taking the teacher up on that instead of just saying, no, I'm fine, I got it. And then we find out, 2 or 3 weeks later that they really weren't fine and that they needed help. Taking time on lessons and assignments, that's something that I don't know if this is a middle school problem or an all kid problem, but quantity seems to be valued over quality with my 11 to 14-year-olds, and just getting them to kind of slow down and, you need to get things done, but we also need to do it well so that we know what we're doing and we're successful in the future, but also so that we get decent grades when this is all done. And then taking notes, following guidance from the teacher, like I had mentioned before. All right, this is the learning coach, the parent, the caregiver, whoever's sitting with your kid day to day. So Holly touched on a lot of this, but helping your student come up with a schedule that works for them. One thing that I found pretty successful, and I've kind of guided some parents to do who are struggling with kids who just kind of are all over the place, is sitting down at the beginning of the week and setting up some goals and talking about what the student's specific responsibilities are for each week, and then kind of recapping at the end of the week. So on Friday or maybe over the weekend, talking about, okay, what did we get done? Do we have anything that we need to make up from this week? Are we good to, maybe take a rest for Saturday and Sunday and start with, our new batch of assignments on Monday, kind of just at the beginning of the week checking in to see where we're at, and then at the end of the week checking back in to kind of see how we did on the assignments for the week. Supervision is key. So Holly talked about at the elementary, obviously there needs to be someone there at all times. Middle school and high school, we're finding that that's not feasible, and it's usually not the case that that the kids have somebody sitting right next to them all the time. But the ability to supervise what they've done when you were gone is so, so crucial. And really, it makes a huge difference between those kids that are successful and those that aren't. It's just the parent checking in to see, hey, what'd you get done today? Show me the assignments that you completed. Let's take a look at your progress in all of your classes. Where are you at? Are you behind in any of them? Do we need to do some extra work in Spanish class today or this week? Just making sure that you're checking in frequently on what they're doing and how they're doing on it. And that kind of goes along with monitoring their time management. We've had a lot of students who it's taken a few weeks for us to figure out that, they aren't on Edgenuity, but they're on their Chromebook all the time. So what are they doing? But just making sure that they're monitoring their time well, that when they have their Chromebook open and it's school time, that's what they're actually doing. And then we talked a little bit about how it's really crucial that the student communicate with the teacher about any specific issues or questions. But quite frankly, that just doesn't happen all the time. So Parents and caregivers and learning coaches, it's kind of their responsibility to help bridge that gap when the student is not their own advocate, and kind of helping coach them through that. Our goal is obviously to get the student to do that advocacy on their own, but they're not all there yet. So that's where the parent and the caregiver come in to kind of help get them there. All right, so I'll talk about a few Edgenuity specific things, but just some common problems. So if your child is having trouble focusing, which I think is who doesn't have this problem from time to time. So like Holly talked about, setting up a quiet, distraction-free space, especially for those students who struggle with attention. Giving them frequent breaks, which Holly also talked about. Set a time for a specific activity, so setting a timer. This is something that good behavior manager teachers do in the classroom. They set timers in short increments for specific activities. And if your child, like if you just say, hey, let's sit down and do math for 3 hours, a lot of times that's overwhelming. But if we say, okay, we're going to do the warm-up activity for this specific lesson, and I'm going to give you, 15 minutes to do that. I'm going to check back in 15 minutes and see where you're at. That kind of gives the kid a little bit better focus, a narrower focus, and a time limit on how long they can sit and do that. Setting goals and small rewards for keeping to those goals. So, hey, if you are caught up at the end of the week, we can go to the park, we can go out for ice cream, or, I'll play a board game with you. Whatever it is that will entice your kid, probably away from the screen because they get a lot of that. But setting goals with kids and then rewarding them for meeting those goals. And then one thing that's huge is that those brain breaks and those breaks from learning, it's so important that the kids get up and move. They're sitting in front of a screen a lot. And so those playing Minecraft is really not a brain break when you're doing virtual school. So making sure that those breaks include physical activity is super important. And then one of the other things that kind of goes along with that is if they're going to do something that is cognitively difficult for them. So let's say that your kid just really, really, really struggles with math. Maybe before they start math every day, getting them up and doing 20 minutes of physical activity. So there's a lot of research to prove that 20 minutes of physical activity gets their brain primed to handle cognitive stress. So getting them up, getting them moving, and then saying, okay, now we're ready for math. Obviously, you kind of ease them into that. But now we're going to, you've had your 20 minutes. Now we're going to sit down and we're going to do this math assignment. A lot of times that goes a lot better. So if your child is just having difficulty, they can say it's hard, I can't do this. So check up, kind of do your homework as a parent and as a caregiver, because a lot of times I'm hearing like the parents are saying, well, this is really hard, and that may be true, but then a lot of times we look back and we're like, well, they spent 5 minutes on the lesson prior to that. So just kind of checking up on them, see what they've done before this. Hey, what have you looked at? What did you learn from the lesson? Can I see your notes? Or what about the assignment that came before this? And then if they're still truly stuck, if you feel like you can help them, great. Otherwise, just talk to your teacher. That's, if I have one takeaway from this whole thing, it's communicate with your teacher when you're having an issue or when you have a question, and don't kind of let those fester and compile before you let them know that there's something going on. Most of the time, they are more than willing to help. The other thing I hear a lot is my kid just won't do it. So they hate ELA and they're not doing, I can't get them to sit down and do ELA. So having your child sit down and create their schedule with you is a lot of times a way to create some buy-in. So maybe they really don't like ELA. Maybe they'd prefer to just get it out of the way. So they start their day with ELA. Or maybe they really hate ELA, so they need to do a few things that they enjoy before they tackle that subject. Just talk to them, get them to help you out with that. Like I talked about before, so setting up some small reward consequences. So setting goals, and if they meet them, setting some rewards. If it becomes a constant problem, I've talked to parents about maybe setting some consequences if they're continually not meeting some goals. Obviously, if those goals are attainable, we don't want to set goals that are unattainable and then, you know, punish a kid for not meeting them. And then again, talk to your child's teacher. So this is my email. I'm going to talk just briefly about a few Edgenuity specific resources. Holly and Kim shared their presentation and I was like, oh man, mine's almost the same. So I added a few Edgenuity specific resources just because that's, you know, what we're both using. So the two things I just want to talk very briefly about are the guided notes, and that is a student resource that is available for secondary students. And then I'll talk a little bit about the family portal. But the guided notes are basically like what a teacher would give you in a classroom. So they're worksheets that have fill in the blanks, they have specific vocabulary, problems, examples, and they match the lesson videos exactly. So it gives the student a little bit of more focus and less work to do while they're watching those lessons. And I do have a little, I don't know if you can still see this. Can you guys see this?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Thank you. Sorry. This is what those guided notes look like. So it tells the student exactly where in the lesson they're finding that portion of the notes. So it goes over like their learning goals, their learning targets, what they're going to learn in the specific lesson. So this is a 6th grade math lesson. I'm a math teacher, so I picked math. It always has a vocabulary section. And then when the student gets to the instructional video, it goes slide by slide. So this is all information from slide 2. And instead of trying to scramble and write everything down all at once, it allows the student to really focus on what the teacher in the lesson is saying and teaching, and they're just filling in small pieces in their notes. So it kind of gives them less work to do in terms of writing and more of a focus as they're doing it. So those are guided notes. Now I have to figure out how to get back to my presentation because my little Zoom thing is covering it. Okay. All right. So I know this isn't in presentation mode, but should work. The other thing I just wanted to talk briefly about was the family portal. So it gives the caregiver just real-time access to how their student's doing. So they can log in at any time and see the progress that their student's making along with their grades. And at least the way it's set up for Hastings is that the parent would email the teacher because there's an individual access code for each student. And then the teacher would respond with directions in the access code. So they kind of, each mentor is responsible for setting that up with their families. But that's available. And then one thing I constantly get questions about is, okay, and now I'm in this parent portal, or I'm receiving these emailed progress reports, which will give the same or similar information. What does all of this stuff mean? And so in Edgenuity, there are 3 separate grades that are all pretty different from each other. Hopefully at the end of the quarter or at the end of the semester, they all end up being the same. But the one I've been telling parents to focus on, at least at Hastings, is the actual grade. That is very comparable to what they would see in PowerSchool, which is what we use to track grades and so forth for our in-person learners. So that, like I said, it's exactly what a kid would have in PowerSchool. It's their grade on the assignments they've completed, but it also counts any missing work as a 0. So it is including those zeros or that missing work in their grades. There's also an overall grade. This is more of just how they're doing on what they've done so far. So it's very similar to the actual grade. However, it doesn't input any zeros for late work. So if you want to know how your student is doing, like, does my kid understand what they're doing? That's where the overall grade kind of gives them a picture of that. However, if your student's behind, it doesn't account for that at all. So just kind of a word of caution. And then the last one is the relative grade. I don't put a whole lot of weight in that, but that's what your kid would have if they stopped doing all of their classwork now, and that would just be their final grade. So I think that's it for me. Are there any questions?
Probably similar to what we asked from TK, what exactly does the Hastings Area School offer parents as far as technology assistance, and especially with computers and internet and stuff like that?
Yeah, so Hastings has gone one-to-one. At least at the middle school, and I believe this is the case K through 12, all students, whether they're in person or virtual, have their own Chromebook. So we have every student who wanted one was offered a Chromebook to take home if they're learning virtually. If we made a switch, like our high school is virtual for 2 weeks, right, starting today, that all of those kids have Chromebooks. I believe they did Chromebook distribution, maybe. I am at the middle school, so I'm not 100% sure how that went, but we are one-to-one, so there's a device available for all students. And then we also had several hundred personal hotspots ordered. So any student who didn't have internet available in their house could come check out a hotspot, personal hotspot for their home. And they've been using that with pretty good success. So.
Okay, well, if no one else has any further questions, I'd just like to thank you all again for attending and also their lovely presentations. I think that I wish more people were in attendance because it sounds like there's a lot of useful information just in this hour that we've been together. So I really appreciate you taking the time and energy to do all of that. And we hope to kind of spread this with everyone that we know and kind of get the word out and know that it's here and available. And also, while I'm here, I'd just like to make a plug for our next family workshop on November 2nd, and that's going to be with the Substance Abuse Task Force Prevention Team, talking about substance use and kind of how we can talk to our kiddos about that and the trending substances in today's world. So thank you all for coming, and I'm going to stop the recording.
Hey, John, did you say anything about you're going to do the poll?
Yes.
Do we do another polling? Oh, okay.